Oh boy. This is one of those weird episodes where it focuses on a guest character that's not really the cause of the main plots, but is instrumental in making it worse. So, this is one of the Reginald Barclay episodes. Reginald Barclay was a very strange character they had in TNG and later in Voyager. They actually stuck him into Voyager somehow, I think. Anyway, though, the thing with Reginald Barclay is that, well, this refers to him as introverted, but it's more than being introverted that makes Reginald Barclay weird. It's that he's also just very, very eclectic in general and doesn't necessarily do what he's supposed to be doing, which is where the real problem with Reginald Barclay comes in. If he was simply, quiet and kept to himself and actually, did what he was supposed to be doing when he's not, being an introvert, it would actually be fine. That's not what happens. Anyways, so Barclay as a GM insert character is sort of. Honestly, I would be more like he's an NPC that you have to deal with as part of completing the quest. Not necessarily a GM insert character because he's not there to help the players. He's there to be a problem for them to deal with. Anyway, there is a big thing in this episode that is something that when you're watching the actual episode is mystery. Okay. The beginning plot of the episode is that the Enterprise comes to this planet to pick up some medical samples that are supposed to be used for helping to research treatment for a disease. Okay, so the Micolax, the planet Nami 4, and Corellian fever barely get talked about in dialogue. Yeah, this is the planet. We know that the Micolax live on that planet, and that the Micolax are suffering from Corellian fever. That's about all we know about any of those things. Where the thing gets interesting is that the Micolax are seemingly not a Federation member. They're a race that is in some way or another friendly with the Federation, and they seemingly don't have much of a space force because you don't see a single ship in orbit around their planet or anything else. And they have the Enterprise coming to their planet to pick up a very small cargo in order to take it to somewhere else. Oh, wait, actually, no, sorry. This is not Nami 4. This is actually. That's the planet that the Micolax live on. Nami 4 is a different planet that the shipment of medical samples is supposed to be taken to. Anyway, so the problem with the medical samples is that the Micolax, the medical sample containment technology they use, uses the material Invidium. However, the Federation crew handling the containers, because they did a critical fail in learning about the Mikulak containment vessels, didn't know that the containment vessels used Invidium. They didn't even think of looking for Invidium because the Federation hasn't seen anyone use it for decades. People just kind of forgot that it exists, even though it's highly useful for certain applications. And, well, I'm not going to say that it's irreplaceable to the Micolax. It's because, quite frankly, the Federation has replaced it. But the Micolax are still using it. The Micolax, because they actually learned the material safety rules for handling Invidium don't have a problem with handling Invidium properly. However, the Federation crew messes things up, and Invidium ends up spilled in various places on the ship, and they're like, huh? What is going on? We don't understand what could possibly have damaged these things. Yeah, and this. Somehow it ends up physically jamming the ship's matter-antimatter injectors. Ha ha ha! Again, this is what I say when I call it a critical fail. How it got all the way from this container into the warp core, I don't know. But it did. Really, really epic critical fail in properly handling Invidium. Anyways, so that was the part of the plot that gives you a sense of urgency, uh, danger to the ship and crew that needs immediate attention, and the source of, life-threatening drama in the episode. It's idiots not handling things properly. Also, it was Reginald Barclay and his stupidity that resulted in the container getting busted. Yeah, like I said, Barclay is the obstacle to the players having a boring, easy adventure. Which again, GM controlled character, but not a proper GM insert character, because he's there to create havoc, not to actually fix things. One thing that's notable is that in the episode, um, they do show this scan of what Invidium looks like. So it is apparently a complex molecular compound. This is literally all we know about what it actually is. Noteworthy is that several of the crew, Miles O'Brien and Lieutenant Junior Grade Duffy, were physically contaminated with Invidium, and it's not actually harmful to have it all on your skin. It does weird things like, causing a drinking glass that Duffy was holding to melt in his hand. And Miles O'Brien apparently is the reason why it somehow got all into the matter-antimatter injectors. So, actually writing this, the basic principles of this are actually pretty simple. You have the plot hook, which is delivering stuff. And then you throw in the Barclay stupidity to make things interesting. Now, for this particular thing, there's a strong chance that I would actually go with a new character that is equally annoying instead of trying to actually use Reginald Barclay, because one, a lot of players will just recognize Barclay and be like, oh god, not that guy again. Two, making a new character with different personality quirks, because of the fact that it's a new character, you don't have to worry about people trying to anticipate the personality quirks. You can surprise them with new kinds of idiocy because they've literally never seen this character before. And yeah, anyways, though, the Invidium gets on several things, and people are like, what is this? What is this doing? What? And somehow fail to detect the Invidium. Why? I have no idea. That is actually one of the things about this that's interesting too, is that personally I would see that as being kind of sort of like well, I used the critical fail thing earlier. It's like uh, they failed to discuss proper handling with the Mikulaks. So they don't know that the stasis technology for their medical samples uses Invidium as part of the stasis pods. Two, they fail to properly handle the stasis pods. Three, okay, granted, the failing to properly handle the stasis pods was Barclay, not one of the player insert characters. So that would actually be more on Barclay than the players. But on the player insert characters, they failed to figure out what was wrong with the anti-gravity sled. They did not detect Invidium when scanning the anti-gravity sled. Why? This is one of those things where I have to scratch my head. It's like in Star Trek, sensors are often uh, set up where it's basically kind of sort of like an AI search routine where you tell it to search for X material. It sweeps it and gives you a positive or negative result. However, they also presumably have a scan function where you scan and have it identify whatever is in this scanning area. That never happens in this episode. In this episode, the only time they were able to successfully detect the presence of Invidium is when they were specifically looking for Invidium specifically. And that is one of those things that just makes me scratch my head, is that it's supposedly something hard enough to scan for that they wouldn't have have the computer just flag it as soon as the computer scanned the thing, and it's like, oh hey, there's Invidium in here. Again, Invidium is the sort of material that by real world standards would in fact be considered hazmat, because of the fact that it is able to damage multiple forms of technology used by the Federation. And that was the key problem in the episode. And you would think that this would be one of those things that they would have their computers set up to detect. Well, one thing that they do mention in the episode is that in the Federation, Invidium use, because they knew it had certain, well, again, hazmat, because they had reason to consider it hazmat. They don't use that word in the episode, but it's the same concept that they talk about. They have reason to consider it hazmat, so the Federation found ways to do those things without using Invidium. And then kind of forgot that Invidium existed. Well, you would think that they would, because they consider it hazmat, uh, put it in their list of things for the computer to automatically check for, but they didn't. Possibly because of the fact that they claim in the episode that several of the technologies that the Federation currently uses were not actually tested to see if the Invidium would affect them negatively, because of the fact that it's been decades since anyone in the Federation has used Invidium. I have to question how the technology changed drastically enough that you wouldn't have had similar issues with similar technologies prior to discontinuing use of Invidium. At any rate, that was the explanation, is that the Federation had kind of sort of forgotten that Invidium existed. and modern Federation technology, which isn't actually all that new. Actually, no. It's that the technology is super new. Had never been tested to determine how badly Invidium would affect it, and presumably older stuff was less badly affected. That's what they went with in this episode. Do I think it's dumb? Kind of. But it's what they went with. Now, the other part of the episode, the Barclay stupidity. This is one of the holodeck adventures where it's not that it goes right or that it goes wrong, that it goes weirdly. And what they do with the holodeck is they use the holodeck as a way to show just how much of a weirdo Barclay is. Because because in a manner of speaking that is convenient for casting, the Barclay holodeck simulations use characters that have the faces of members of the crew. So, you have the same guy who plays Commander Riker playing this guy. And you have the woman who plays Deanna Troi playing this goddess of empathy character. Which, it is actually a plot point in the episode that Reginald Barclay was intentionally using the appearances of members of the ship's crew because of the fact that this was in some way related to how he personally perceived those characters. But also in part because of the fact that Reginald Barclay is a weirdo and doing weirdo things for weirdo reasons that don't make sense to anyone other than himself. Anyways, that is actually pretty much the bulk of the episodes, because the whole holodeck thing with Reginald Barclay using the holodeck way too much and doing all sorts of weird, stupid stuff on the holodeck, and that actually is like padding for the episode because of the fact that Barclay is a distraction for the players to deal with. So you have, Riker and Troi talking to Reginald Barclay about his personality defects and so on and so forth, which keeps Riker and Troi from doing anything about the Invidium contamination on the ship. Granted, that's not their, specialty. People's best guess as to what Riker's specialty was prior to becoming a first officer was pilot. The only notable thing we've seen him do, or most notable thing we've seen him do as a outside of being command staff, is to be very good at making ships fly. Anyways, though, so Riker being someone who is paying attention to Invidium stuff, I mean, he's there because he's command staff. Picard seems to be someone who's like genuinely better at this sort of thing, because people's best guess as to Picard is that he was a science officer of some sort. Not a medical officer, but like fulfilling the same role that Spock had in TOS. They think before he became a command officer, that's probably what Picard was. Anyways, though. And that's about it for this episode. Not a huge amount of stuff other than the Invidium contamination mystery and Barclay's idiocy. Well, see you guys next time.